Born Before 64 is a TV show that asks the vital question, what will we do for the rest of our lives? Kathryn Raaker hosts a show for baby boomers and above, inviting real people to tell real stories about overcoming issues, about facing with courage and triumph the significant obstacles many of us face every day. Born Before 64 TV shows will cover topics that this generation is interested in. So let's join Kathryn Raaker for Born Before 64.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Timeless Performers, and we are here today on location in Houston, Texas. And we have with us today a famous artist, radiologist, a former South African, and an all-around guy. And his name is Julius Danziger. And I want to welcome you to our show today.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And I have some questions for you immediately. I love your accent. What part of South Africa are you originally from, Julius?
Well, I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, and lived there for many years. Became a doctor and a radiologist, specialized in Cape Town in the late 60s, and worked in South Africa, in Johannesburg, South Africa, and ultimately came to America. Initially I was in Boston, where I did a fellowship in neuroradiology, and then went back to South Africa for 7 years, and then came back to Houston, Texas, where I worked as a diagnostic radiologist for almost 37 years, and 3 years ago retired to do the thing that I really wanted to do most of all, and that was paint and watercolor, and that is what I've been doing ever since.
All those years, right?
That's right.
You know, it's amazing, so many doctors, and I'm going to say this as a general statement, and I work with lots of them, all have other things that they love to do, including my uncle, who was an anesthesiologist. He was a photographer, and brilliant photographer. And you know, your paintings, how long have you been dabbling?
Well, funny enough, you should say about photography. I started off as a photographer and became very serious as an amateur photographer and traveled the country. I spent maybe 5 to 8 to 10 years traveling to all the wildlife areas, photographing very seriously wildlife. And then in the last 7 or 8 years, got more interested in painting, and I changed from that photography to painting as a form. My main emphasis today is only painting the female figure, which I do.
Well, this looks like Marilyn Monroe to me.
Yeah, it is a copy of her.
It's a copy of
That's
her.
Right.
It's a gorgeous, it's watercolor, correct?
That's watercolor. And as you can see, it is Marilyn Monroe, but it's less is more, because it's got very little, very few lines and very little definition, but it shows her quite well. In fact, it's the contrast of the black or the color against the white watercolor paper which gives the appearance of her with charcoal on her hair. So it's the idea of less is more often works well, because you can easily overwork a piece in watercolor.
And that's true. And there's so many. Is watercolor harder for you, or easier?
It's all tough, because you don't get a second chance very easily in watercolor, because if you mess up, you lose the white and the white of the paper, and you don't have white as a medium, as a paint to use on the watercolor papers. So you try and do the best you can.
So you just retired recently from being a radiologist,
That's
am I
correct.
right? Mm-hmm. Did you paint all the time that you were in practice?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
Only the last 5 years.
Oh, wow. So you're one of these wonderful mature, right?
Yeah, mature
yeah. Artists that, you know, it's amazing. Did you ever paint before this?
No, never painted before. No,
you're kidding me.
Not at all.
And this is all.
This is all 5 years.
Now, what's your favorite? Is Marilyn your favorite? No. Now, who would be your favorite?
None of them. I just try and paint things as they come by, which catches my interest.
So, how long does it take you to execute one piece?
Depends upon the size and how much detail it has.
What's the largest piece you've ever done?
50 by 30.
That's wonderful. That's gorgeous. I have to tell you, many years ago when I was doing stained glass art, painting stained glass art, I was living in Singapore. And unfortunately, when I did it, they went to frame it, and they used a glue that bled through my work. So what I had to do is a 3D effect to cut the glue. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it may not be you that's doing it, it may be somebody else, you know, that, is that right?
That's right, but what of interest is many times the mistake is often the thing that makes the beauty of it.
That's right.
Because if the watercolors bleed or they run or you mess up and you wait a step back, it looks beautiful. In fact, it looks much better than if you tried yourself to do it properly. Right.
So now, does your family appreciate your artwork?
I think so.
You think so, and they encourage you?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's pretty exciting, I think.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. When you first came to America, what did you feel like? How did you feel?
I felt like a stranger.
A stranger?
Sure, we were strangers in the midst of a new environment.
And what did you think of Boston? Because I used to live there.
Boston's a wonderful, wonderful city, and we had wonderful times there. And in fact, when I came back from South Africa, my job in 1977, when I came back, was in Boston. And I arrived from Cape Town, South Africa, which was the midsummer in December 76. And I landed in Boston in January 77, the 1st of January 77. From the beauty and the warmth of Cape Town, South Africa, and ended up in the freezing cold of Boston. And I went to the hospital who had hired me, and on my first day of work, I went to the chief of the department, and I said to him, I'm here to take my job. And he said, welcome. And I said, that's fine. And he said, I hope we're going to have a very long relationship. And I said, I'm not sure. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, the job is wonderful and I'm happy to be here, but I don't think I can live in this weather. And we have a contract for 1 year, and I'm going to stay there as I promised you. But at the end of the year, I don't think I'm going to stay.
Did you?
Straight out. Told him straight out.
But did you stay more than a year?
No, I stayed. So he said to me, well, if that's the case, I don't think it's going to be good for me to have you because it takes more than a year for you to settle down. And I then said to him, well, what do you suggest? He said, well, I know somebody who needs somebody with your skills down in Houston.
Oh.
And he called up the hospital in Houston, and they offered me a job, and I left Boston that very night and I flew to Houston, took off my winter coat, and came to the beautiful weather of Houston, and have never left since.
Well, I have to tell you a funny story. My husband worked for a very big aircraft company, engine company, GE, and we got transferred to Newburyport, Massachusetts. I actually never worry about anywhere I am. My husband hated the weather, couldn't stand the weather, and didn't want to stay very long. So, and I would be out in the elements and doing it and had to put up with it, you know. So we were there for about 3 years. And but you know, I've lived in beautiful climates like Singapore and all over the world actually. But it's hard for you, especially if you come from a climate that's extremely warm, or you know, like South Africa, right?
Well, I wouldn't say South Africa. Cape Town is not extremely warm. Cape Town is ideal in the summer. It's a very beautiful
place.
Beautiful place.
But it gets hot here in Houston.
Well, I'd rather have the heat than
the cold, right?
Cold.
So anyhow, so you had a really wonderful career in radiology,
wonderful
correct?
Career. I was with one hospital for 35 years.
Wow, that's
never
great.
Changed jobs.
Never changed.
Never changed. I was there for 35 years. Had a wonderful professional career, and there comes a time when you've got to leave.
That's right.
And
so when did you decide you wanted to become an artist?
Well, it was when I realized that my job was going to be, when I was going to be leaving, or the job was going to come to an end, at that time, I decided I need to have alternative occupation or interests I didn't want to stay at home and I wanted to do something else.
Okay. And on that note, we're going to take a short break. Do you have a website?
Yes.
Can you give your website out, please, to our audience?
I've got two websites. One is called JD Colors, jdcolors.com, and colors is COLORS, and the other one is jd-colors.com.
Right. And can you tell me how many pieces do you have up on your website right now to show to sell?
Well, my inventory changes very rapidly.
Right.
And a lot of what's on my website is probably sold already.
But they get an example of what you do.
Yes.
And on that note, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after these important messages.